let's talk about how feminism was destroyed from within, because this is really quite manifestly obvious, and it's shocking just how open the people who have destroyed feminism have been about it. Personally, I'm not a feminist. I've never been a feminist. I don't really like feminism because I don't think it sees the world accurately. So I'm not sad to see it be destroyed, but it's just funny to see how this has happened. So you get examples like this, right? So the BBC put this up the other day. Oh, feminist collages in London tackling violence against women with slogan posters. And so they complain that a number of women in the UK that have been killed or suspected of being killed by men in 2021 has reached 100, according to data collated by Counting Dead Women, a femicide census project. So they've gone out and posted a bunch of collages going, oh, we, the women, are the tremendous victims of violence.
I think they kept using the word femicide.
Yes.
As if killing women is some kind of killing a holy cow or something.
Yes.
It's better than just normal homicide.
But the thing is, right, if we, it's just cringe, right? Yep. I mean, what even is a woman? How did you collate these statements? No, I really want to know.
Yep.
How do you know that it wasn't men being killed? And how do you know that the men that you're categorizing as being killed aren't actually women?
Or the male killers aren't women.
Exactly. How did you check? You didn't check any of this, right? You just completely abolished all of the assumptions that modern feminism operates under, because it's all bull. And you know it, right? But it's also total cringe, right? This started in Paris, came to London, so brilliant, another foreign import that makes no sense. But it's total cringe, and there's no impetus to it, right? Because if we just look at the murder rates for 2020, if we go to the next one, right? There were 695 victims of homicide in the year ending March 2020, 47% more, 7% more than the previous year, which includes a particular Grays lorry incident where 39 people were killed. Which due to human trafficking. So if you exclude that, it's actually not that much more than the previous year. But the homicide rate is 11.7 people per million. The rate for men is 17 per million, and the rate for women is 6 per million. So 3 times higher for men than women.
Also, this is expected that women are
of
lower
course it is.
Universally. But also, the UK is not high on the percentage of countries.
The UK is also much, much lower than almost every other country, frankly. And so this means that there's just no particular impetus for this. It's not that women are being killed in dramatic or unusual numbers. In fact, they're being killed in much fewer numbers than before. It's just there was one high-profile case, which is the Sarah Everard case, which is what they were protesting on the previous one, which is one high-profile case. And again, it wasn't even just the man doing it. I think it was the man and the woman both involved.
I think she got let go in the end.
Did she? Right,
yeah.
Okay. But anyway, so, looking at the rest of the data for the sake of it, 2/3 of these homicide victims were white, 105 of them were black, so 443 were white, 105 were black, which means that black people were massively overrepresented in people who were killed. Guess what the most common method of homicide was, Callum?
Stabbing.
That's right, sharp implements. So, we come to a position where it's incredibly unlikely that a woman will be killed, but it's far more likely and too likely that young black men will be killed with edged weapons. And so young English women complaining about women being killed is a vanity project. They're literally the safest people in the country. And they're like, oh, women are under threat. No, they're not. Right? There's a genuine lack of authentic problems. And so this is why the feminist movement had to expand. And you can see this in articles like this. Now, this is just one example of probably tens of thousands that I could have picked from, where the drumbeat from the intersectional feminists was, oh, feminist solidarity empowers everyone. The feminist movement must be trans-inclusive. And so they end, this is amazing as well. What's the rationale for this, right? They say, it feels distinctly modern and unprecedented that we find ourselves in this obliterative debate where one side can't prevail until the other is destroyed. Are women women or trans women women? That's the question, right? Where all the values of the movement are parked so we can fight over issues that are so technical there's no room for compromise, yet so abstract that there is no space for human beings. None of this was settled in science, just so you know, right? There was no definitive treaty that we all signed. We all just slowly decided that binary debates are interesting to have, but boring to live. Solidarity is boring to talk about, but fascinating and empowering to live. Solidarity is not exclusive or pedantic. It is compassionate and fights for oppression wherever it finds it. That is its lifeblood. That's why trans women are women. What absolute sophistry this is, right? So it's not based in science, and it's based on basically the left decided. Everyone decided, and what happens if you disagree? Well, you get threats and violence, but we'll get to those in a minute, right? And so you get the example of the classic one at the moment is Marion Miller appearing in court. She appeared in court, was it last week now, I think it was. She's been charged with a hate crime because being a biologically essentialist feminist is illegal, or might be illegal in the UK. It appears to be illegal, and this court judgment will discover it, I suppose. But so she was having a hearing, and a large demonstration took place outside in support of Miller, and there's growing international support for her. Meanwhile, Scotland's census will, for the first time, allow respondents to self-identify their sex, and that's what's being protested. As in, you can just identify as whatever you want. So all of the men in Scotland could just identify as women, and there'd be a giant male genocide in Scotland, because men would cease to exist. But there'd be nothing, 100% women. Could be. Why not? What's wrong with that? What's the problem? Makes the census a joke. What's the point in having a census if it's just like, oh, just write down what you feel like. Don't write down what you are. But anyway, the protesters, one of them was attending the demonstration, asked police if wearing a T-shirt stating trans women are men would be illegal. The constable said that he was free. I don't know if it's a man. He was free to wear what he liked. But if it offended anyone and a complaint was made, he would have committed a hate crime. Which, as Just for Men and Boys here put, that's an odd use of the word free. You're free to not offend men who identify as women, or anyone who ideologically would take offence to that.
But also, you're free until you offend someone.
Yes.
And then you're not free.
Yes.
Okay.
Not very free, right? And so this is TERFs being persecuted by the state. The campaign group Women Won't Weesht, which means shut up. As a misogynist, I'm just like, oh, God. No, I'm joking, obviously not. So yes, this is being framed as a move to roll back women's rights. Marion Miller's supporters insist, hence the Handmaid's Tale TV series costume. Again, my favourite utopian fiction. This turning Scotland into Muck Gilead. Where women will be subjugated entirely to men. Well, not entirely wrong in a way, actually. Right? Nicola Sturgeon is a destroyer of women's rights, according to this argument. And anyway, we haven't got a result on this, so we'll see.
I do love their perspective, though, that they imagine the trans movement essentially made up of the meme from South Park. Was it Strong Woman?
It's man. And that's what it is.
I can't remember the character's name, but there's like that really hulking WWE wrestler.
Yeah. It's like the It's Man meme. I mean, this is literally where this is going, right? And of course, this is all because of a tweet of a suffragette ribbon that was tied outside of a BBC studio. It looked like a noose.
It didn't.
Which it didn't. It was obviously a ribbon.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I like the SNP's logo. That actually does look like a noose, but...
Yeah, well, that's interesting, isn't it? One of the activists said, women have the right to speak out on issues and matters that concern them. But do they, though? Do they? The state isn't sure, and... there probably will be a guy that's wearing a dress that will be offended by it. And we actually have an example of that. We can go to the next one. This was taken from one of the protests where, if you can scroll down a bit, just so we can see this picture, right? Just look at the size difference between those two people, right? So this is a furious Edinburgh local screams witch at gender reform protesters outside Holyrood, which is the Scottish Parliament. Hundreds of demonstrators gathered at Holyrood to protest the plans to reform the gender recognition law, but they were met with keep it on the picture. Just I want people to just keep this picture in mind, right? Where they were met with counter demonstration from trans rights campaigners on the other side, right? In footage shot at the event, a local opposed to the protest, who is understood to identify as a transgender woman, is heard chanting the word witch at the protesters before another woman is heard responding, "You are not one of us." At one point in the video, the furious woman screams witch, the woman on the right, screams witch at the woman on the left, in the face of the protester before police can be seen getting involved. Look at the physical difference. Just look at that physical difference. If this were two men, I would be like, why are you doing this? You're intimidating and bullying them because of the obvious size difference. And so here we go. We've got someone who was born male and transitioned to become a woman is psychotically screeching at this other woman. So anyway, they of course are opposing the Gender Recognition Act. They're saying that it erodes women in our society. It's like, yeah, but it erodes everything else as well, doesn't it? If there are no boundaries or borders and nothing makes sense, then everything's eroded, but of course we can only talk about women. But anyway, this carries on because it's not just in Scotland or anything like that. This is everywhere that this ideology is going, right?
Sorry, I was looking up the image without the blur, and it's worse.
I couldn't find it, actually.
I'll send it to you
Yeah,
afterwards.
yeah. Anyway, so the TERFs groups, which is the trans exclusionary radical feminists, so I believe want to be called gender critical, but basically they're biologically essentialist. They think that to be a woman you have to be female, like a Nazi or something, which is what they get called. Basically, there's a new group in America called Sovereign Women Speak. This is again in the United States, but these sort of groups popping up everywhere because they're like, hang on a second. We're not even women anymore, according to you guys. We don't really exist. How can we be feminists? How can we fight for women's rights if women's rights includes males? And that's a great question. Now shut up and get in jail.
I thought we were both meant to have rights.
No, men don't have rights. Don't be stupid. But anyway, what they notice is the problem is the increasing amounts of violence coming from the trans rights protesters. This talking about an author called Derek Jensen, who is an ally to this. The lady founded this called April Morrow said, "It's affected me personally at the university I teach at. I'm being forced to use pronouns, and if I don't, I will lose my job. I'm being forced into an ideology I don't believe in, or I become unemployed." Oof. That's a harsh, like, turn of the wheel, isn't it? Because 6 years ago or something, it was the same thing for people who were just against feminism, and now it's for the feminists against transism, and who knows what it will be in 6 years from now? The trans rights people getting fired for not believing God knows what.
Transracialism?
Maybe.
I'm
Well, no,
hoping.
they're probably. I think transracialism and transgenderism essentially mesh together pretty well. So it'll be a new thing that comes around on the wheel, and then boom, they'll be broken on it too. But they say at the next event I went to, I saw the same thing. It was a pattern. They do not want us speaking the truth. They want us to remain silent. They want to do everything in their power to keep us silent. They have the right to speak, but every time we try an event, they come and shut us down. It's very scary, as in they are physically intimidating and very aggressive. You can see an example of this at the We Spa Brawl, of course, where, Fox News doing some reporting here. Video shows a mob of people clad in dark clothes and masks, some wearing vests bearing the word press, mocking and chasing a man down the street. He can be seen wearing a t-shirt that reads, "Obey Jesus." He was punched from behind at least once, and subsequent photos show him with blood running down his face and chest. There was brawls between trans protesters and counter, normal people. And they, various violent brawls. Someone got stabbed, or two people got stabbed, in fact, on both sides by the same person. Don't even know. It's an absolute...
American culture wars, very normal place to be.
Absolute chaos. But it seems that it was mostly the trans activists doing the initiating of violence, because they were the ones who got kettled and arrested. The right wing, dare we call them, counter-protesters or protesters, were not being arrested, presumably because the police are Nazis as well. But anyway, they were burning dumpsters and things like that, and even the leftist outlets had to describe it as a brawl. They couldn't be like, "Oh yeah, look at these evil right-wingers attacking our trans protesters." No, you started the fights. That's the way it is. And so, yes, they had to admit this in their article, but we'll carry on. In fact, no, I love the way that they frame this, right? A protest against We Spa was planned for Saturday morning by those who supported the woman who complained and were against the Spa's policy of protecting trans rights. The Spa's policy? You mean California law?
Yeah, the spa doesn't get a say in this.
No. They don't get a say in that at all, right? But protesters who turned up supported the spa also turned up, and the dueling factions exchanged punches in the street, according to multiple journalists. Yeah, that's right.
Exchange punch. I know it sounds so like, "Come here, boy."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was, yeah, exactly, very old-fashioned. But the thing is, what does this put the leftist activism in defense of now? Of course it's nonsense. Of course it's nonsense. So the trans woman who was showing off their female penis to children, young girls and women in the women's area of this spa, has apparently had charges of indecent exposure filed against them, and apparently they're a serial sex offender, according to the Los Angeles Police Department. Sources with knowledge of the case, but not authorized to speak publicly, say 4 women and a minor came forward to allege that Darren McGee Maraja was partially erect in the women's section of We Spa. Besides being a suspect in this case, Maraja is facing multiple felony charges of indecent exposure over a separate incident in Los Angeles. Wow, what a shock.
See, that would converge with the initial reporting on it, which is there were a bunch of different spas in the area that had all had reviews as well from women being like, "Yeah, there was this guy in there who kept talking about how he had sex with women and trying to pick up chicks in the changing room and was totally trans, he sweared."
Yep. And is apparently a sex pest. in front of children. Maraja, who spoke exclusively to the Post, denies these allegations, so they're not true, Callum, and actually she's the victim of transphobic harassment.
You can't arrest me, I'm trans.
Literally where we're getting to. And so let's revolve around to where the leftist thought leaders are on this. People like Judith Butler. I'll explain who Judith Butler is, well, in a second, in fact. But she did an interview with The Guardian, which was very spicy. Except the spiciness was redacted. So it's just a normal interview, right? And let's just go through the normal interview and then I'll tell you why it's been redacted. So she says we need to rethink the category of woman. I mean, I think we have. I think that's the problem that we're facing, in fact, is the rethinking of the category of woman. But the author of the groundbreaking book Gender Trouble says we should not be surprised when the category of women expands to include trans women. No, because they did this on purpose. I've read Gender Trouble.
Yeah, that's true. They were literally like, yeah, we'll have the antonym in the same term. It's like,
Don't be surprised when it expands. Why? Because I'm expanding it. Well, I'm not surprised then if you're doing it on purpose. Jesus Christ. Right? So the interviewer says, it's been 31 years since the release of Gender Trouble. What were you aiming to achieve with the book? We know. We're living the results of it right now. It was meant to be a critique of heterosexual assumptions within feminism, but it turned out more to be about gender categories. For instance, what it means to be a woman does not remain the same from decade to decade. It did for literally thousands of years. For thousands and thousands of years, women were just adult human females. And in the last 10 years, they've become something different. The category of woman can and does change, and we need it to be that way. Yeah, we need it to be that way. Politically, securing greater freedoms for women requires that we rethink the category of woman to include those new possibilities. Well, now it's not going to exist at all. And again, securing freedoms for women. What freedoms didn't women have in the 90s? Like, it wasn't...
kill babies?
No, they had that freedom.
All right.
If you can call murder a form of freedom.
I'm talking about late-term abortions. You know, the Democrat version.
Yeah, there was probably a limit on how free they were to murder their babies. That's true. But how does making males women increase that freedom?
More women, therefore more rights. No, you're trying to do
Anyway.
leftist logic here. I don't know.
So, rethink the category of women to include those new possibilities. So we should not be surprised or opposed when the category of woman expands to include trans women. And since we are also in the business of imagining alternate futures for masculinity, we should be prepared and even joyous to see what trans men are doing with the category of men. Trans men, I hate to say this, are totally failing at being men. Where are the trans men Olympiads? You know, where are the trans men winning gold medals? Who ever cares what a trans man has to think? Like, as Jordan Peterson pointed out, all of male interactions are underpinned by the threat of violence. I'm not afraid of violence from trans men, so I don't care. You know, it's impacted masculinity not at all. But trans women have, in fact, impacted the thing. Buck Angel is super based. I don't know who that is.
Trans meant that says he's a biological woman.
Well, okay, wow. Super based to admit reality. Right, anyway. So I came to understand that broader coalitions equally opposed to racism, economic injustice, and colonialism were essential for any queer politics. We see how this works now in queer Marxism groups, queers for economic and racial justice, queers against apartheid, Al-Quaz. I don't know what that is. I think it's an Arabic queer Al-Quaz. I don't know what that is. The Palestinian group against both occupation and homophobia. So we're against Jews and we're against hanging the gays.
I suppose it's like a play on words for like Al-Quds.
Yeah, I think so.
Like
I think that's what it's meant to be.
Instead.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's
the only place they could have a headquarters would be in Israel, because if they had it in Palestine,
at least in the Middle East,
they'd be thrown off
it's
the
probably
roof.
based in America. Yeah. But yeah. So how did we go though from women's rights to queer politics in the same interview? You know, and then Palestine and Marxism and homophobia. It's like really weird, isn't it? How that's just kind of snuck in there. And it's actually not very weird, because if you just look at her book, it's called Gender Trouble, Feminism and the Subversion of Identity. Literally in the title, what they're doing to you, ladies, feminists. And Wikipedia has got a great little description of this, right? Just so you got a bit of a background on it. Right? She argues that gender is a kind of improvised performance. The work is influential in feminism, women's studies, and lesbian and gay studies, but has also enjoyed widespread popularity outside of traditional academic circles. People like me have been reading it. Butler's ideas about gender came to be seen as foundational to queer theory and the advancing of dissident sexual practices during the 90s. But there we go. Ladies, feminists, you got subverted. They're literally saying it. They literally use the word subversion when talking about this, right? So anyway, this interview was redacted because she called a bunch of TERFs fascists. Do you want to hear how they're fascists?
Cool.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. It's, of course, The Guardian, if we can go to the next one, John. The Guardian were accused of censoring her and being cowards over it because she had called them that. But it's like, okay, but she does sound like a lunatic. She said, the fact that trans-exclusionary feminists have allied with right-wing attacks on gender, that's us, by the way, was appalling and sometimes frightening. The TERFs and the so-called gender-critical writers have also rejected the important work in feminist philosophy of science, as if there's such a thing, showing how culture and nature interact in favour of a regressive and spurious form of biological essentialism. Anti-gender ideology. They're
admitting they are gender ideologues.
But the thing is, they are the ones abolishing gender. Like, literally, if gender can mean the opposite of what it's supposed to mean, like males can be females, females can be males, then who's the gender?
I love how it's like anti-revolutionary activity, like
yes.
Soviet Union.
Counter-revolutionary. That's right.
Yeah.
The anti-gender ideology is one of the dominant strains of fascism in our times, she explains, and so TERFs will not be part of the contemporary struggle against fascism because they are the fascists. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom. I'm Judith Butler, feminist philosopher. I know all about things. Let me call things fascism.
They're not part of the revolutionary vanguard, therefore they're fascists. I mean,
right.
Socialists talk about, other slightly left-leaning people like this all the time, don't they? So, like, well, you're not full-on communist.
One of the dominant strains of fascism in our times.
Yeah.
It's just such a joke.
I love the implicit argument there that essentially the problem with the fascists, anti-gender ideology. I thought there were other things that were wrong with them. Okay.
That's what was the problem with fascism, folks. You heard it here first. But I just love it. The contemporary struggle against fascism. Just where? What are you talking about? Oh, well, people who believe that, women have vaginas. Typical fascists.
Oswald Mosley.
Yeah. I guess so. I bet if you listed every fascist, every single one of them, if you got to ask them, like, do women have vaginas? They'd be like, yes. There we go. Classic hallmark of fascism.
Could you imagine time traveling and asking people that in the 70s?
I would. I absolutely do. Go back to the 30s. Excuse me, Mr. Hitler. Do women have vaginas? Yeah. Excuse me, Mr. Mussolini. Do women have vaginas? See. There we go. Anyway, so why this was removed, according to a statement given to Motherboard, is that the Guardian's editorial team, and its particular team based in the UK, folded under pressure from readers who took issue with the article and decided to censor Butler, because we are, of course, TERF Island, because of the British empiricist tradition of looking at reality and recording what we see, we find that women have vaginas. And so we're a very empiricist, turfy place. Habitual bigots online are going to do their thing and usually respond to pieces without reading them, Gleeson wrote in a statement sent to Motherboard. What's been more unexpected is how quickly the publication folded. I was expecting the Guardian US to stand by me as a writer. This is the person who interviewed Judith Butler. And while I have received apologies from their side, this has been draining and consuming episode I didn't expect. So there we go. And that's how feminism got eaten from the inside by intersectional social justice, and that's why women lost their rights.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can go to prelotuseaters.com and get access to all our premium content.
Things like our book club, where we examine classics like Aldous Huxley's Brave New World and examine the themes that underpin it, and now we're getting worryingly close to that, or modern books like Mark Sidwell's The Long March, which is how exactly we ended up in the current cultural situation we're in and what conservatives can do about it. Or you can check out the other series we have, such as our Contemplation series, where Hugo and Josh decided to, in the latest one, have a look at an examination on the ways that other elections have been rigged. for no reason at all. Or you can check out our Epoch series, which is one of my personal favorites because this is where I get to talk about history. And I love talking about just random things from history. And one of the great things we can do with this series is talk about those things that aren't so often discussed. So, I mean, you can talk about Xerxes' army, the vast army that invaded Greece during the Greco-Persian Wars. Or we can go through things like Herodotus' view on the Scythians. Who are they? You probably don't know, but they used to be quite an important people a long time ago, and they're very, very interesting. We've got some really good reports about them. Or we've got premium podcasts, which is things we generally don't want to put outside of the paywall because we might get in trouble from, such as the list of things that Alex Jones was right about. Or we do just very interesting discussions because there are things that we do lots of work on. Another one is that I'm particularly proud of is where Christopher Hitchens, the famous new atheist, would have fallen during the modern culture wars, because he probably wouldn't have been very woke. But we also have lots of interviews and articles and other things on the website that you can sign up to enjoy, and we're really proud of them.
So if any of that sounds good to you, go over to lotuses.com and sign up for as little as £5 a month to support us, keep the show going, and also to get access to all the content. Thank you and goodbye.